Short me $70,000 in violation of our written agreement? It'll cost you $1.8 million. Edit 1. Thank you for the awards. I appreciate them all. Disclaimer. The names and some of the situations have been changed to protect the identities, but the dollars and general nature of the situation is completely true. Background. A year out of school in the early 1990s, I procured a job as a business analyst for a large, family-owned tech company. This business was located in the booming heart of technology at the time and was very profitable. As tech took off over the next decade, the company thrived and remained family-owned. What was a rich family and company became exceedingly wealthy with a valuation, net worth in the high 9/low 10 figures. The family that owned it was quite neurotic, very moody and had a reputation as very ruthless, greedy, when it came to financing, deal-making, employees, etc. I truly believe this is what held them back from ultimately becoming a household name as a company. As I progressed in the company, I gained more and more face time with the owners. I worked on some projects directly with ownership that really paid off and gained me even greater access to their inner circle. Now, like a lot of people at the time and particularly those who worked in tech, I was heavily invested in tech stocks. I discussed some of my investments and gains with ownership as casual conversation, though investing had nothing to do with my role in the company. That is until one day in late 1999 when the owner came to me and asked me if I would invest some of his personal money. He wanted me to take big risks to see if they would pay off using $1 million of his personal money. I was a bit hesitant, but still being in my late 20s and wanting to prove myself, I said I would. I asked for a written agreement where they acknowledged this wasn't my role in the company, was a personal matter between the owner and me, and to document my compensation for this side arrangement, 20% of all profits. Around this same time and by working in the industry, I started to notice the weakness associated with a lot of tech companies. They just weren't living up to their hype and stock price, and some seemed like they were starting to run out of money. I had no inside information, just a strong sense of which companies were struggling based on my work in the business. Based on this sense, I started using both my money and the owner's money to short tech companies just after the new year in 2000. For anyone unfamiliar with shorting, it means if the value of a stock decreases, the value of the investment increases. I had a few long positions, but my overall position was very short. Since the owner wanted big risk and big reward, I used his money and obtained leverage or margin from the financial institution where I maintained both his and my trading accounts. The accounts were separate, but both under my name. Again, I documented this and gained consent. Well, both my account and his suffered some moderate losses in the first 2 months of 2000 before the bubble began to burst, and both accounts, but his in particular, began to skyrocket. Ownership's pettiness. In June, the company began to suffer a downturn. We were still profitable, but since we provided tech services and products, we were not immune to weakness in the broader market. I had not informed the owner of my short strategy. He came to me one day and asked how his money was doing, saying he suspected it was way down like the general market. To his surprise, I informed him that while we still had some money tied up in options, puts, and shorts, but based on the positions I had closed, there was $1.35 million in cash sitting in the account that belonged to him. Again, I still had a bunch of open positions which, if memory serves, were worth about $1 million on that date, but the positions I had closed had yielded $1.35 million in cash just sitting in his account, which was in my name. The owner, either through ignorance or lack of attention, said, "Great, $1.35 million. Fantastic work in this down market. Will you please wire it to me?" I responded that I would, but would be taking my 20% of the $350,000 profit, or $70,000, before wiring him the $280,000. I also reminded him I still had open positions that had yet to pay off or close, but I didn't state the amount. He, once again, appeared not to understand or comprehend the open positions statement, but instead totally focused on and became incensed about my rightful claim for $70,000. He went on and on about how times were tough, I should be grateful for a job, particularly at my young age, and the entire $350,000 was necessary for him and the company. I knew this wasn't true based on my position within the company. Worse, this was my first time personally experiencing the greedy and corrupt nature that served as the basis for ownership's reputation. The revenge. Now comes the revenge. Since, after 2 separate conversations, the owner didn't seem to grasp that the open positions would yield at least some income, and thus additional profit, I decided not to mention it again. I sent him back the entire $1.35 million and continued to manage the open positions to the best of my ability. And here's the kicker, the owner never brought it up again. He seemed to think the $1.35 million payment was the entire value of the account and never understood or remembered that open positions still existed. He never asked for records, tax documents or any time of audit or financials. Given the fact that he was dishonest with me, I didn't feel the need to disabuse him of that notion. Ultimately, after a bit more net gain, I covered all of the shorts and exercised all of the options, puts in this case, for an additional $1.8 million. I worked for the company for 3 more years and owner never asked about it during my tenure, after I gave notice, or since. I know it's a bit crass and even shady as if, but given his dishonesty with me over the $70,000, I felt justified in keeping the additional $1.8 million. I paid taxes on the gain, long-term cap gain, and went on my way with a fantastic nest egg. Nobody has asked about it since, and I have only told the story to a few people, and even then only after the statute of limitations passed. The final ironic cherry on top of this sundae is that during my remaining 3 years I gained greater influence with ownership in position within the company because they considered me loyal for giving the $1.35 million back and not making too much of a stink about the $70,000 profit. Little did they know I got the better of them. The company eventually folded due to family disputes, but my understanding is that ownership walked away in very good financial position. They likely could have been a much better and greater company had they not practiced the same dishonesty that they showed me with their vendors, clients and employees. Thanks for reading and hope you enjoyed. Tell my mum to speak English. Okay. This is a story that was recently brought up again by my mom when she was recounting some really shitty racism she encountered when she first came to the United States. I've heard this story a few times before but didn't think to share it anywhere else. That is until I was made aware of this subreddit. Enjoy. It was the late 1980s in Los Angeles, California. By this time my mom, a Japanese immigrant, had been living in the United States for 10 years. Although she could speak English well, she wasn't fluent and preferred to speak Japanese with others from the local Japanese American community. One day, she and a friend were waiting to be seated at a restaurant on Beverly Boulevard. As they chatted away in Japanese, a large shadow cast down upon them. Looking up, they found Karen's 1989 counterpart leering down at them. Mom couldn't remember how the woman looked except for the look of pure contempt trying to work its way across facial muscles frozen by Botox. "You too," Karen barked. "This is America. Speak English." Startled, my mom and her friend made eye contact, unsure of what to do. Encounters like this were, sadly, ones they had run into many times since they came to live in the USA. They were not ones for confrontation. Before, they couldn't do anything while their bullies marched off, unpunished. But then, as they made eye contact, a brilliant thing happened. Mom likened the moment to their thought processes coming in sync together. They had a shared idea that didn't need any further elaboration or explanation. "Masami, my dear, I do think the waiter ought to have shown up to escort us to our table by now," Mom chimed in the poshest British accent she could muster. "It's frightfully rude to keep us waiting like this." "Yes, darling," her friend replied, invoking her best impersonation of the Princess of Wales. "It is frightfully rude indeed." As they continued to twitter away in their fake English accents, Karen began to slowly back away. Her Botox face reddened and twisted itself in a visage as hideous as the Furies. Realizing that she had just been outsmarted by 2 young women obsessed with British culture and celebrity, all she could do was storm off down Beverly Boulevard, a defeated bully. While there was no direct punishment, it was a story that my mum would continue to retell 30 years later. It has always made me chuckle to myself, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Edit, so there was a massive error on my part. What I thought was Botox paralyzing Karen 1989's facial muscles would have most likely been a botched facelift. For some reason, when I first heard my mum's story, I just immediately thought her face was that way due to a bad Botox injection. And holy shit, this post blew up. I thought this was going to get buried. Thank you everyone for your comments and awards. But seriously, if you have money to burn, please use your funds for a worthy cause. This edit is coming in too late, but in the future even a small donation to organizations working to stop Asian hate crimes goes a long way. Thank you.